This is Madden NFL 23. Be sure to like the video, subscribing is great as well. So what are we getting here on the Xbox Series X? So we get two modes, a quality mode, which is what you're currently seeing, which is a native 4K resolution at 60 FPS. There's HDR support. And then later on in the video, if you want to jump to that to see what it's like, there is a high performance mode, which is on by default, which goes to 1440p at 120 FPS. So you do obviously get a bit of a fidelity drop when you do that, but you get a very high frame rate that feels fantastic to play. I can't wait till we get to the point in sports titles where we're just getting the full resolution with the full frame rate. That will be spectacular. But for now, we deal with what we have, and both options are pretty good ways to play the game. Obviously, if you don't have the higher frame rate TV, going for that higher resolution quality is kind of the way to go. So it's another year, it's another Madden title. I do want to quickly show off that there is the visual setting and graphics at the bottom here. And you can change that kind of on the fly if you'd like to, but it's also available within the main menu. I do also want to mention that accessibility-wise, you can turn off the dynamic camera effects at the bottom there, because there is this really terrible thing that is forced on you if you play like quick play and stuff. There might be a mode where you can turn it off, but it's called this momentum mode. So momentum mode essentially is this really stupid system that they force on you where, depending on how well you're playing or how bad you're playing, momentum will shift, and it can create like a point where your screen is kind of like in a nauseating way kind of shaking, and turning that setting off will prevent that from happening. So for this year's Madden, I'm really hard-pressed to find, true changes to the game. I know that's a weird cliche thing to say. I do feel like they maybe fixed up some of the bugs here or there from the last year's version. But this is very, very much playing it safe and not doing anything too wild with the gameplay. It very much looks the same, and it very much plays the same. And I know, once again, I hate saying that kind of thing, but between 22 and 23, I look at this and I'm like, what actually changed here? Now, that's not necessarily like, a bad thing. It's still a good simulation of football, It's the only option you really have, and I think people that are buying Madden regardless are going to buy Madden. If you're kind of on the fence, yes, I would say this is one of the first years where I for sure am like, this is practically the same as the year prior. Now, we do have some changes here or there that I'd like to go over. We do have advancements to how you kind of throw the ball with some new precision systems. I've opted to go with the traditional throwing scheme because that's kind of what I'm used to, and, after, couple decades of Madden at this point, it's just how I play the game. So, yeah, that is something that you can play around with. They give you the option when you begin. Do you want to try these out? Totally up to you to go and do so, right? It's kind of a neat setup, and I have been seeing that some other people are quite liking those options, so you do you in that regard. There's also some adjustments to what they're calling like this field sense system. Oh, that was great. That was really cool. So field sense is like a bit more of a dynamic in how the players kind of react and move and stuff. Like, obviously we still have like clipping and everything like that, and also, from what I understand, a lot of people kind of find the crowds and stuff to not really be too wild, and they find the commentary to be a little boring. I don't really care either way, but there is good diversity within the crowds in regards to different types of people, and they all have movement, and it feels like there's a lot going on there. It kind of feels like a full game of, oh, come on. It does feel like a full game of Madden, and it feels like the AI cheats sometimes. Just saying, just throwing it out there. But yeah, there hasn't really been changes to the crowd. There hasn't really been changes to the ambience, the visuals. I mean, it looks good, it looks great, plays well when you're like this, but there's not really anything too super next-gen about it. Like, obviously, we did get, those next-gen improvements, but it does kind of feel like they literally just slapped a high frame rate mode and then left the existing mode as is. That's kind of how it looks. It doesn't really feel like it's a true next-generational push still. And I know it takes a long time for that to happen, but in the past, when you went from, like, the Xbox to the 360, it felt like a massive generational change. from the 360 to the Xbox One. Massive generational change. Even going from Xbox One to the One X, I was like, whoa, this is a big graphical upgrade. But it's just a higher frame rate mode, which is great. I love the 120 FPS mode, don't get me wrong, but still kind of waiting for that visual change up where I'm like, whoa, this is, truly impressive. Other than that, it's got the typical modes you would expect, you got your exhibition, you got your live games, you've got a cool new, I guess first and 10 on 30 seconds, okay. You've got, like, this, I guess you would say, brand new Madden type mode, because this is, the first game following, obviously, the loss of Madden, who is the namesake of the brand, the big individual, kind of, thrown right on the cover of Madden. I mean, right there, name's right in the title. So you get what I'm saying is, like, it's kind of a big deal because that is huge for this brand. There's few other sports titles or even games that bear the name of individuals on the cover. And following, obviously, that loss this year, we do have a special kind of Madden mode. The menus and the opening sequence are really Madden-inspired. You get to see some clips. These digitally included in the game. It's a nice touch. It is. It really is a nice little addition. I kind of like that. I think it's handled well. It's got a good amount of, like, retro and everything like that. At the same time, it would have been cool to see some more, like, literal retro, kind of like a best of included in this one would have been cool, or some kind of, like, retro throwback type. Maybe even... Oh, come on. Maybe even the inclusion of, like... Oh, wow, a fumble. I don't know, remastering the original or re-releasing the original. Something like that would have been really cool. And I know it's not like an anniversary or anything, but it would have been a nice touch to also see that become available. But like I was saying, play now, live updates, the rosters are obviously constantly getting updated. They've got a revamped sort of franchise mode again. It seems like they really don't completely know what they're doing with franchise these days. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I do actually think franchise mode has gotten some nice improvements for this year. But what I'm trying to get at is the fact that, it doesn't seem like they really are going in a direction and sticking with it. Because a few years ago they were trying to do, like, this intense story stuff. And, obviously they sort of have ended that in recent years. And then they were trying to do... they've been kind of switching over to you make your own character and do some story stuff, and it just kind of seems like each year they don't really iterate on that, and it's kind of like an almost different thing that they attempt every year. But there are some nice tweaks to franchise as well, and well, I'm kind of talking about because there's regular franchise mode where you run the the teams, but then there's like the your story kind of franchise thing. That's what I'm trying to get at there. So I hope that explains it kind of well. And it feels like they're not really... I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they eventually get to a point where they are doing something more direct and then they just keep building on it as opposed to trying and re-scrapping and trying new things constantly with that mode. So I hope that explains it well enough and you get what I'm going for in that regard. Oh, geez. Past that... we've got things like Ultimate Team, the same the same modes we've had in the past. You get like tweaks here or there. They'll give you some additional cards and stuff, but yeah, it's not like it's wildly different this time around. It very much is the game you expect in the past. We're also going to show off little bits of other matches, like a rain match and also like a snow match, just so that you can see differences in the weathering, but they haven't really changed that at all, if that makes sense. It's just like, it very much is, as I'm trying to get to, the game we've seen so many times over. And that's not a bad thing if you expect that from Matt. Did he really not get that? I genuinely cannot believe he did not get that one. I am just absolutely flabbergasted that catch was not done. Blows my mind. I mean, I do like the details of like the grass getting damaged, but it also seems like the players don't really directly impact the grass, and they don't directly impact things, and the rain and the snow feels very superficial. Uh, there's also the yard is present. You've got the online mode, so you can compete against others, and some cooperative type things. You've got your different leagues you can do. You can enjoy this guy running all the way down for a touchdown, and then me deciding, hey, time to switch off and show that other weathering condition. That's what we're gonna do. So this is in the rain, so we can show off the weathering conditions, because I like to show off a wide range of looks at how these games are kind of presenting. So once again, like, it looks good. I like the wetness of the characters, but it just feels so superficial on the actual, like, impact and stuff like that. It feels like they just put rain as an overlay, and it doesn't really, like, it dabs the field, but I don't know, it doesn't quite look right. It's got like a sort of fake thing to it, right? And we've also got like this KO mode, which is kind of neat. They talk a little bit about the season engine, where seasons are a little bit different over time. Continuing the X factors, which kind of ties into the whole momentum system, which I don't like. And then there's unified progression across the experience from face of the franchise. That's what I was talking about. Face of the franchise, and then franchise. Two kind of separate things, but similar. The yard, which we talked about, which is like, weird locations. You do your customization stuff there. Superstar KO is, NFL teams and rosters to that mode where you play fast games in a co-op eliminator with dynamic rules. All that kind of stuff. So you get a range of different ways to play and experience what it has to offer. But once again, I get back to the point where I'm kind of looking and I'm like, what is wildly different here? What really changes up the game in a way that's kind of like why you need to upgrade to this particular entry in the series? Like, what are you kind of getting out of it? It's a good Madden. If you haven't played Madden in a few years, and you want to play that next-gen experience, it's good. It's great. It works, runs well, looks good, handles well. It's the latest entry. If you're coming off of last year, do you get Madden every year? Well, you're probably just going to get it this time. If you're kind of iffy, maybe wait a little bit and see if there's some further innovations is kind of the thing. Like, it runs fine. There's nothing, like, totally detrimental on the Series X. It's a good running game. It does give you those next-gen visual choices, while at the same time not really feeling like a true generational showcase. And I've been really feeling that across the sporting experiences for sport games, because those used to be the big things where you're like, you get a new console and you're like, whoa, these sports games, they look amazing. Look at these huge changes. And you could go back and you could compare year on year. And yeah, there'll be, improvements graphically here or there, and you'll have touch-ups and stuff like that. You look at the beginning of the Xbox One era and you compare it to this one, it's going to be a substantial change-up. But you just got to think of it from the perspective of, like, how much are we advancing year on year? And it feels as though it's plateauing. That is my biggest thing. And it feels like we're not really getting anything that's, like, groundbreakingly exciting for modes or, activities to do. They do have a range of modes, obviously, We talked about that, making your own character and doing stuff, playing the regular franchise, enjoying some touch-ups here or there, but, like, you get what I'm saying. Is kind of, it doesn't feel like we're getting real advancements. But that's fine, too. It's comforting. It's kind of an expected sporting game each year. Millions of people love their Madden. And I continue to sit there and I'm just like, where are they going next with this franchise? What are they doing to advance this? What direction is it heading down in the future? And it just kind of like, it feels as though they're very much playing it sort of safe. I don't know if there's still some sort of development things, and I know it's like a rush every year to get these games out, but I do hope that there's a certain point where once again I'm kind of like, oh yeah, they really did retool things. And like I said, I don't know if their development is still impacted from previous years, but I am hoping we do get to that point again where I'm kind of like, wow, look at these upgrades, look at these enhancements. And once again, we're going to have to swap over so that I can show off the snow mode, that you can see how the snow weathering is, since I do like to present different visual looks at Madden. So here's the game with the snow effects being showcased. It's also a good excuse to swap up the teams so that hopefully some different people that like different teams get to see how they look in the game. So you get your updated rosters, you get your different modes, you get a visually impressive game. It's the full package. The snow tech is still just the exact same as it's been over the last few years. It's not great. Really does need a lot of work. It's not bad for like footsteps, but like player bodies and stuff, it's just kind of rubbish. Like it really does feel kind of fake, and it's kind of like we just threw it in there. What is going on with this screen? That's funny. And there's also like it's really low res when that Madden logo pops up. I don't know if people can notice that, but like it really looks as though it's like a quick video being played as opposed to anything rendered in-game, because the resolution quality just absolutely plummets, which is crazy. Oh, yep, big catch. Nice. Nope. Never mind. Small updates, small incremental improvements. It's the game that simulates the league and provides you all the things, and all the teams are updated, and interceptions are like crazy. Yeah, that is for sure. Oh, and differing difficulty levels, if that, kind of matters to you. But it really is like, what else do you talk about when you're kind of checking out these games year on year? You got to be like, I'm sure somebody that's like really into it will be able to dive into like, oh, this small little thing here and there. But when you look at it from like just the perspective of a general user that plays Madden every once in a while, once a year, I'm kind of like, I just want to see something more that's like, whoa, Because this looks great. I mean, look at the density of the crowd. You get all these things on the side. You get all these different players. But, like, how is this any different from what we've played in prior years? I once again tie back to the fact that I literally think this might be the smallest change-up in presentation we've seen out of this franchise. And I really do have, like, honestly, a good amount of experience. Even though I'm not showing it gameplay-wise with sick plays, but I have played this franchise for many, many years. I've seen the improvements, I've seen the changes, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know, I want more. But at the end of the day, it's generally a great game. I know I may be like kind of coming across as like back and forth where I'm like, well, this is plateauing, this is meh. But like it is. It's very well put together. Everything is smoothly running. It looks good. It fluidly handles. They've cleaned things up. They've done some work. But the amount of work they've done doesn't make me really go, wow. And I think that is kind of a problem with a lot of sports titles these days, but it's still fun to play. It's still a good time. It's still Madden football. And it's got those nice touches and tributes to Madden, obviously, which I think are, like a good inclusion to have within the game. But other than that, I don't have many details, and you can jump over and see how the game is looking with the high frame rate mode going on. So this is the performance mode. So what we're getting here is, once again, 120 FPS at 1440p. So that means we get a little bit of a lower resolution, but we get an insanely smooth high frame rate offering within the game, which is fantastic. And YouTube does not support 120. I can't record at 120, but I'm playing at it, and I'm recording the gameplay so that you can see visually how it plays, and I talk a bit about how it feels. So obviously, when you get to these high levels of fluidity, it just really feels right. I'm hoping at some point down the road, it's just kind of a standard when it comes to playing, these sports titles, that we do get 120 FPS is just sort of like the default go-to option. And I'm sure eventually, power-wise, we'll end up reaching that sort of height. But yeah, I definitely do think it's quite worthwhile, especially if you take it, very seriously, the game. You get that high frame rate level that just really allows you to fine-tune your moments, your big catches, your big hits. It just gives you that extra bit of like, support and assistance when you're going out there in the field trying to, perform and make the big plays. And it just gives you a little bit of an advantage, which I think is quite important. And honestly, visually, it's not too much of a drop down in regards to the visual fidelity of the experience. I still think it looks, kind of relatively great from that perspective. And I think mostly it's just kind of like you're sacrificing, it is a bit of resolution, it is a gap, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like that control and extra power you get is well worth the change up, just so that you are getting that fluidity level. And yeah, it's a really nice option. Everything feels really, really good to handle, and really, really good to play in this one.
And he takes this one back into the end zone.